Imagine for a second that you are sitting on the balcony of a luxury penthouse on the 60th floor of a shimmering glass tower in Dubai. It is early March 2026. The air conditioning is humming a perfect 72 degrees. The sunset over the Persian Gulf looks like a high-definition filter from a billion-dollar movie, and you are looking at your laptop screen with a satisfied smile. Your latest rental statement just arrived for your investment units. A 9% yield, completely tax-free. In a world of staggering Western inflation and crumbling infrastructure, you feel like a genius. You've followed the path. You saved your first $20,000, you built your digital systems, and you moved your atoms to the desert to escape the reach of the tax man. You feel like you've finally hacked the matrix. But then, the horizon changes. You hear a sound that wasn't mentioned in the glossy investment brochure. A low, chest-thumping rumble that shatters the silence of the desert evening. It's not thunder. It's the sound of history catching up with you. You look at your phone, and the notification light is pulsing a violent red. The headlines are screaming, U.S. carrier group strikes targets in Iran. Hormuz Strait closed to all commercial shipping. Suddenly, those floor-to-ceiling glass walls of your penthouse don't feel like a symbol of elite status anymore. They feel like the transparent walls of a very expensive trap. In a single hour, the safe haven you invested your life savings into has been redefined as the front line of a global conflict. In a single hour, the 9% yield you were so proud of has been rendered irrelevant by a 100% risk of total asset freeze. Today, I'm going to share a cold, analytical perspective that real estate influencers and tax-free paradise promoters will never tell you. In the year 2026, geography is the ultimate friction tax. Until you understand political risk, your wealth isn't a ticket to freedom. It's just a bigger, more static target for the black swans of history. We've spent our previous discussions building your foundation and flipping the ledger, but none of that matters if you build your fortress on a geopolitical fault line. I want to show you why I am avoiding the high-yield desert mirage and how to identify the boredom zones that actually offer survival in an age of accelerating chaos. For the past few years, the narrative has been seductive. It's been a global siren song. Move to Dubai, buy property in the sun, escape the Western bureaucracy. Millions followed this call. They moved their atoms, their physical bodies, and their capital into a tiny slice of the world that exists only because of an incredibly fragile geopolitical equilibrium. Dubai is a logistical miracle. It is a masterpiece of human engineering, but from a systemic perspective, it is a high-leverage hub. In systems architecture, hubs are the most efficient points in a network, but they are also the most vulnerable. When the gears of the global machine start to grind, as they are right now, the hubs are the first things to break. When you invest in property in a place like Dubai, you aren't just buying a kitchen and a view. You are buying what I call a geopolitical option. You are betting your future on the assumption that the surrounding region will remain stable enough for the world to keep flying into that airport and sailing into those ports. The 9% yield you are chasing is not free money. It is a risk premium. The market is paying you that extra percentage specifically because there is a statistical probability that the entire thing could be rendered worthless overnight. Most people make a fatal error. They focus on the expected return while completely ignoring the risk of ruination. Let's look at the math with a cold eye. If you have a 90% chance of making a 10% profit, but a 10% chance of losing 100% of your money, your mathematical expectation is actually zero. But in the real world, it's worse than zero. Because if you lose 100% of your principal, you are out of the game forever. You can't recompound a zero. As the current conflict escalates, the friction tax of being in a high-risk zone is starting to manifest. It's not a tax collected by a government, it's a tax collected by reality. It manifests as skyrocketing insurance premiums for shipping. It manifests as liquidity lock, where suddenly no one wants to buy your penthouse because they are terrified of the next morning's headlines. It manifests as a brain drain, where the high value talent starts looking for the exit. If your $20,000 launch pad or your $200,000 fortress is tied up in unmovable concrete in a conflict zone, you have lost your most precious asset, mobility. Wealth is not just a number on a screen. It is optionality. It is the ability to move, to pivot, and to say no. But physical real estate is the least liquid asset on earth. You cannot put a 3-bedroom apartment in a suitcase. You cannot move your rental yield if the local banks are under a cyber attack or if the airspace is closed. When the atoms you own are stuck in a danger zone, you aren't an owner anymore. You are a hostage to the map. Have you ever wondered why governments love it when you buy a house? It's because a house is the ultimate geopolitical anchor. The moment you sign that deed, you have volunteered to be a tax-based hostage. They know exactly where you are. And they know that you cannot leave without suffering a massive financial friction tax. The system loves it when you lock your wealth into fixed, targetable physical locations. It makes you predictable. It makes you easy to control. In 2026, the elite are increasingly mobile, while the middle class is being encouraged to anchor themselves in high-yield, high-risk zones. The Matrix wants you to chase yield at the expense of sovereignty. It wants you to be so blinded by the 10% returns that you don't notice the iron chain being tied around your neck. Sovereignty is not about how much you make. It's about how much of your life is under your own remote control. If a general in a foreign capital can decide whether or not you can access your home, you don't own that home. He does. Now, I know what you're thinking. Okay, Rob, I get it. Dubai's a risk. But the West is drowning in taxes, so where am I supposed to go? Where should I put my atoms? This is the question that keeps most investors paralyzed. They want you to believe that it's bad everywhere, so you might as well stay put. But the sovereign architect doesn't look for a perfect paradise. I look for a resilient foundation. I use a 3-pillared framework to evaluate where to stand. If a location doesn't hit at least 2 of these 3, it's a pass for me. Pillar 1, resource independence, food and fuel. In a global conflict, the first thing that breaks is the supply chain. If you are in a desert city that imports 90% of its food, you are in a state of terminal dependency. I look for boring places that produce their own calories and their own kilowatts. This means looking at countries with vast agricultural land and local energy surplus. These places aren't sexy. They don't have 7-star hotels, but they have survival yield. They're the places where the lights stay on and the plates stay full, even when the rest of the world is screaming. Pillar 2, geographic isolation. Wealth loves boredom. I look for jurisdictions that are far away from the main characters of history. If a country is a strategic pivot or a digital hub, it is a target. I want to be in the places that are geographically irrelevant to a world war. I call this strategic obscurity. Small, stable nations in the Southern Hemisphere or isolated island nations with strong rule of law are the new premium real estate. Pillar 3, institutional inertia. In 2026, radical change is the enemy of wealth. I want a place where the laws are so old and the bureaucracy is so slow that they couldn't become a dictatorship or a socialist utopia overnight, even if they tried. I want a jurisdiction where nothing ever happens. When you ask which country, you are asking the wrong question. The right question is, which location allows me to ignore the news for a month without my life falling apart? I am often challenged on this. People say, but Rob, the yield in those boring places is only 3% or 4%. I can make 10% in a high-growth emerging market. My answer is always the same. Survival is the highest form of yield. The most important part of compounding wealth is not dying. If you grow your wealth at 10% for 9 years and then lose 100% in the 10th year, your average annual return is negative 100%. You are back at zero. You have lost a decade of your biological life. A 4% return in a boredom zone where you can sleep through a global crisis is mathematically superior to a 12% return in a chaos zone where you have to watch the news every 15 minutes just to see if your assets still exist. The friction tax of anxiety alone will lower your productivity and destroy the cognitive bandwidth we worked so hard to restore. True sovereignty is the ability to look at a global crisis and feel nothing but a mild curiosity about how it will shift the long-term markets. It is the ability to know that your family is safe, your pantry is full, and your future is not dependent on a decision made in a bunker halfway across the world. The ultimate social algorithm hack for 2026 is to decouple your earning from your standing. My fortress is not a building in a desert. It is a decentralized network of income streams. My bits, my digital assets, and my information products are geographically agnostic. They live in the cloud. I can access them from a laptop anywhere on the planet. This is the movable wealth strategy. I keep my atoms, my physical life light and resilient. I own my home in a boredom zone where the friction tax of living is low. But my bits are plugged into the high growth sectors of the global economy. If one part of the world becomes high friction, if the Middle East explodes, or if a Western capital implements a wealth tax, I don't stay and fight the friction. I don't argue with the system. I simply relocate. I take my $20,000 launch pad and my liquid reserves, and I move to the next low friction zone. This is what the top 1% do intuitively. They are not loyal to a piece of dirt. They are loyal to their own sovereignty. They understand that the map is a menu and they choose the dish that nourishes them the most. Let's look at the current US-Iran situation through the lens of this strategy. While everyone else is arguing on social media about who is right, the sovereign architect is looking at the supply chain of freedom. If the Hormuz Strait is closed, the price of energy doesn't just go up. The entire energy-intensive infrastructure of the modern world begins to experience mechanical friction. If you live in an energy-dependent hub, your cost of living is about to experience a vertical spike. The 9% yield on your Dubai penthouse will be instantly swallowed by the 20% increase in the cost of water, electricity, and imported food. You aren't earning anymore. You are just a shock absorber for a geopolitical crisis. The architect, however, has already positioned their atoms in a place with local energy surplus and vast agricultural land. To them, the energy spike is just a line on a chart. Their burn rate stays flat while the rest of the world's burn rate explodes. This is the ultimate ownership flip, owning the ground that doesn't need the matrix to survive. One of the most dangerous lures in 2026 is the crisis deal. You will see real estate agents in high-risk zones offering incredible discounts. They will tell you, now is the time to buy. The blood is in the streets. This is how the big players get rich. Do not be deceived. If a property is cheap during a conflict, it is cheap because the market is pricing in the probability of zero. When you take that deal, you are selling your peace of mind to a desperate seller. You are gambling with your escape velocity capital. Remember, the first $20,000 is sacred. It is your ransom money. If you lose it in a high-yield desert mirage, you aren't just losing money, you are losing the years of biological life it took to earn it. You are handing your free will back to the system. I want you to be a boring investor and an exciting creator. Build your bits in the most innovative spaces, but keep your atoms in the most stable, uninteresting, and resource-rich physical spaces. This bimodal strategy is the only way to win in a decade defined by volatility. The treadmill only wins if you stay in a place where the system can reach you. It wins when you are too heavy to move and too distracted to see the storm coming. I want you to perform your own geographic risk audit. This is the final step in the series of audits we've been performing on your life. First, identify your points of failure. Look at your house, your bank, and your primary income. If all three are in the same city or under the same legal regime, you have a concentration risk. You are one political decision away from zero. Second, evaluate your survival buffer. If the global supply chain stopped tonight, how many miles is the nearest farm that produces your food? How many miles is the nearest power plant that uses local fuel? If the answer is thousands of miles, you are living in a high friction zone. Third, test your movable liquidity. If you had to leave your country tomorrow with nothing but a laptop, how much of your net worth would go with you? If 90% of your wealth is tied up in a local mortgage, you aren't an architect. You are a tree, and trees can't run when the forest is on fire. Real freedom is the ability to look at a map of the world and see it as a collection of services. Some countries offer safety, some offer tax rates. The sovereign architect uses different countries for different purposes, but the foundation, the place where you keep your atoms and your family must be chosen for resilience, not for luxury. As the rumbling continues across the Persian Gulf, you have a choice. You can be like the thousands of investors currently staring at the horizon in Dubai, praying that the conflict doesn't cross the water. You can stay in your golden cage and hope that the lords of the cloud continue to provide you with access to your own life. Or you can be the architect. You can realize that your $20,000 launch pad was always meant for this, to buy your way out of the danger zones, to move your assets into bits that the matrix can't touch, and your body into boredom zones where the matrix doesn't care to look. The journey to $100,000 and beyond is not just a mathematical climb. It is a geographic one. It is a biological one. It is the process of slowly, methodically removing every single hook the system has in your soul. We are entering a period of history where the average person will be wiped out by events they don't understand and cannot control. But you are no longer average. You have the bandwidth. You have the capital. And now you have the perspective. The treadmill only wins if you stay exhausted and anchored. It's time to get light. It's time to get liquid. It's time to own your geography. I have a challenge for you today. I want you to be brutally honest with yourself in the comments below. What is the one geopolitical hook in your life that makes you the most vulnerable right now? Is it a house you can't sell? A city that is running out of resources? And what is the one step you are taking this month to make your wealth more portable? Share your story. Because in a world of sinking ships, the only way to survive is to build our own fleet. If this video helped you see the map with new eyes, hit the like button and subscribe. We are building a community of people who refuse to be hostages to history. Remember, your income is a choice. My name is Rob, and I'll see you in the next one.